Hey guys, welcome back to Tabletop Glory. My name is Graham Johnson, and once upon a time, and by that I mean mostly the end of last year, I said that if I couldn't come up with a bigger video for every single month, that you would at least get something. Now, I have been working on the Diamond Coal Company model railroad model kit. That's a mouthful. There's got to be a better way to say that. Essentially, it is a coal mine for my model railroad, and it's a rather large model. It's HO scale, which I believe is 1/82nd off the top of my head. I might be wrong about that, but it's a pretty decent sized scale, which means it's going to be a rather large model, and it's going to be a lot of fun to work on, and it's going to look beautiful when I'm done painting it. However, putting the thing together has taken way longer than I thought, and I'm gonna go into details as to exactly why in that video, so we're not gonna go into that here. However, this video is more or less about the things I wish I could have said better in original videos. You see, over on TikTok, I tend to do a lot of live streaming, which means I get asked the same question a lot, and that results in me being able to perfect my answers and practice my answers to the point where I can regurgitate information in a far more successful and far more effective way than what I did in videos where I covered those exact same topics, such as like wet blending and things like that. So, without further ado, this is the start of a new series where anytime I get a series of clips, like maybe 4 or 5 clips of me better explaining things, I'm going to just put those together in a video and post it here. Now, you shouldn't need to see the original video. I should be able to give you enough context in the clip to know what's going on. So you shouldn't have to go and backlog, but if you've seen some of my content before, you might agree with me that I do a much better job of explaining some things in this video than I did in those original videos. And eventually I will get around to remaking those videos, so making sure that my thoughts are heard in a constructive and clear and precise way is something that will be coming. But you know, I'm still new to content creation, and so sometimes my videos can be a bit of a mess. Sorry. Without further ado, let's get on with the video, because I really got to get back into working on this model. Hey guys, this is the awesome miniature from Games Workshop that I was working on at the time that all these awesome questions were coming in. I just wanted to show you what it looked like at the end of that live stream. So basically I'm now building up the highlights in the bone, going all the way up until almost pure white. The trick and the magic to it is deciding what doesn't get highlighted. And sometimes the key is drawing details that aren't actually there, which is why I'm holding the back of the brush and just kind of letting the natural jitters of my hand do a lot of the work for me. We as humans tend to like to paint in patterns, and so that can be really detrimental when painting things like bone, at least in my opinion. So I'll hold from the back of the paintbrush and just kind of let the jitters of my hands take care of that random striation or that random line or whatever, and really build up the brightness very slowly. And there'll be a few places we'll put deliberate highlights, nice sharp bright lines. Most of it's going to be randomly placed this way. I'm just going to lay in a nice bright undertone for the inside of the mouth, because I'm going to be using a brown wash here in a second. I just want to make sure that the inside of the skull gets some paint on it, other than the brown wash. Tips for wet blending. Wet blending is pretty tricky. I did a video talking about different ways of thinking about wet blending on my channel, but the long and the short of it is, if you're just like struggling with getting a smooth finish on a wet blend, Try thinning out the colors a little bit and using them more like glazes and washes, and build the color up slowly. And don't be afraid to like wet blend once, let it dry, and then wet blend again on top of the same spot until you get a much smoother transition. Sometimes having multiple layers of wet blending on top of each other can really help blend all of those colors together. If you're really struggling with like seeing how wet blending works, a little test you can do to kind of get a good visual aid for yourself is you can wet blend with water. You use a color and then you use water, and you see how the paint interacts with the layer of water. And that gives you a good understanding of how the paint's going to interact when it touches another wet paint. So you can see just really how much they bleed and run together. And it's a really great way to like practice wet blending in like an extreme circumstance. Because when you wet blend with water, it's going to bleed together a lot. But wet blending with water can be a really great way to kind of smooth out your transitions and get a much smoother finish. But yeah, definitely don't be afraid to do multiple passes of wet blending. Trying to see if I've got a good spot where, so like right here, I want to make this area a little darker. So I'm making the area wet first, and that's going to help the paint to blend. And then I'm adding a small amount of that darker color that I want. And I'm letting it blend with the water a little bit. And if I go too far and I don't want it as far as that, I come back in with my color that matches what's already there. And I just kind of work it back and forth. And I'm using the water to help aid in the wet blending. Now, it's important to keep in mind that wherever you pick up your brush is wherever it's going to be at its darkest. So I'll just push my brush stroke up underneath the scabbard here before I pick up my brush. And that's how I get that wet blend. And that'll dry and it'll look great. And you saw how little paint I was using to do that. Yeah, I know your stuff, Tank. Dude, I had to start going to your channel just to see your videos. The water doesn't change the perception. What the water does is it aids in the filtering process. It aids in how the paint flows out across the surface in a smoother and more uniform fashion. And so when I'm wet blending on top of two colors that are very similar to each other for me, or two colors that are almost identical for me, what the water does is the water changes the way that the light filters through the water and kind of slightly gives a slightly different appearance to the wet paint. And it's very subtle and it's difficult for me to see sometimes, but I've been told that when it dries, I get really smooth wet blends that most people really struggle to get. But because of my color blindness, those wet blends tend to just kind of work for me. But mostly the water just helps with the dispersal of the paint and really helps me to smooth out my finish and my brush strokes. And it kind of just does what most people would consider to be the hard part for me. And that's not to say that it just instantly does it. There is some method to the madness. You do have to teach yourself how to do this. It's not just an overnight success like contrast paints is. You do have to teach yourself how to do this as a method. Do I wear any kind of magnifying anything to see the details? No, I find that magnifying glasses of any kind tend to mess with my depth perception, so I don't use them. I've had people who have offered to let me use some of their like head-worn stuff just so that I can try it, and they're okay. I think if you can teach yourself how to paint with them on, they're definitely something that will help you. But I've taught myself how to paint without them, so it doesn't really affect me the way that it affects other people. I'm using a no-name brush from Hobby Lobby. There's nothing magical about it. It's just a size 1 brush. They come in packs like this. They come in 5 packs. You can find them in the hobby section in Hobby Lobby. There's literally no branding on it other than their own branding. And I figure, you know, at $5, if only one brush in the pack is a good brush, that's still $5 well spent. Usually there's one bad brush in every pack that I just have to throw away after an hour or two of painting. And I was so glad to see that Squidmar put out a legitimate video with really amazing good stuff in it. Although that having been said, I broke one of the busts and I emailed Emil thinking he wasn't going to email me back. And I was like, hey man, I broke one of the hands on the bust and I just can't fix it. My skill level with green stuff is not good enough to fix it. I was like, do you have spare parts? And he emailed me back and he's like, yeah, I've got spare parts. And I bought spare parts from him. That was so awesome. I feel like a lot of miniature creators would just leave you high and dry and not email you back. Emil's amazing. I hope I get to meet him someday. I hope my channel becomes large enough that I have the excuse to meet him. Honestly, that's why I like Scott the Miniature Maniac as well, because he seems to actually know what he's talking about. I know a lot of people don't like his content, but he does know what he's talking about. And I've been following Scott since before he was the Miniature Maniac. I've been following him since he used to be the host of Backyard Effects. Oh, is Mushroom Guy still in here, or did he dip out? Anybody know? Mushroom Guy, I'm calling you out, my buddy. I want to know if he's seen my most recent YouTube video. He's like my only Patreon, so I just kind of assume he watches my YouTube videos. Sometimes I feel like Mushroom Guy believes in me more than I believe in myself sometimes, but I've been my own worst enemy for a long time.